Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Kellen here again with Droid Life. Still Galaxy S10 coverage incoming. S10e over here, S10 Plus here. We've done first 10 things to do. We've done unboxings. We've given you some other just cool random things to check out. But we want to complete the series here, and that means it's tips and tricks time. So we're going to bundle the two phones since they're very similar outside of a couple of minor differences like where their fingerprint readers are. So yeah, we're going to make this one big video, and it's probably going to be big. So grab a snack, grab a drink, settle in. Let's talk Galaxy S10 tips and tricks. Now, because this is going to be a lengthy video, I'm going to talk really fast, so be prepared for me to talk at lightning speed. If you don't catch something, just rewind a little bit and rewatch it. I'm also going to focus on the S10 Plus because I think this is the phone most of you are going to buy, or the regular S10. The S10e we'll dive over to if things change or things work a little bit differently. So anyway, let's go into this. And where we like to start almost always with these videos is the lock screen. This is your point of entry. This is where you need to get everything set up as perfectly as possible so that you can get information without maybe getting into your phone, getting into it quickly to get to that information and doing it all securely, right? So I'm talking about things like double tap to wake. That's handy, right? Or picking your phone up off the desk and lifting to wake, and then your phone wakes up. And I'm also talking about fingerprints and facial scanning, launching the camera. All of that stuff is very, very important. So this is how you get it all set up. I'm going to go ahead and unlock, but where I would start is in settings. I would go down to gestures or advanced features. First advanced features and then motions and gestures. And that's where you'll find lift to wake, double tap to wake. Turn those both on. They are really, really handy. I don't know why they're not lock screen settings, but they are in advanced features, motions, and gestures. So that's where you find those at. So turn those on. From there, we want to go into lock screen if you haven't already. And up here, it's secure lock type. You have to set one, right? Swipe, no security. I would not do that. And I don't know if you can even set fingerprints or face recognition if you do that. So you have to choose pattern, pin, password. One of those because you have to secure your phone, and then you can bypass it with face or fingerprints. See those options down there? So set up one of these three and then toggle these two on. So if we go back then, from there, back one more, we're going to biometrics and security. So face recognition, we can start up there. I have face already set up, but if I remove it, just so you can see how this works, I go ahead and register a face. It says, cool, let's register a face. Are you wearing glasses? Say yes or no there. Continue, and then it'll start scanning your face. There's my camera. I'll show you what it looks like when it scans my actual face. It only takes a couple of seconds. Boom, face is ready to go. And then you can unlock your phone with your face. Once you've done that, there's some options in here. And those features are stay on lock screen, faster recognition, lift to wake, and brighter screen. So stay on lock screen means when it registers your face and scans in, it says cool, it'll stay on the lock screen. So then you have to swipe to get into it. Or if you have that off and it registers your face, it'll just boom, snap right into the home screen. Kind of up to you how you want to do that. Faster recognition, they're actually kind of weird about. It just says if you have this on, it's probably a less secure face scan. So you may want to turn that off. Lift to wake, we already turned that on. So you kind of decide what you want to do. But lifting to wake will wake the phone, and then it'll try to scan your face right away. Up to you how you want to deal with that. And then brighten screen, just in darker situations, it kind of tries to brighten the whole situation so that it'll scan your face no matter what the lighting is like in your room. So anyway, that's some of the face stuff that you'll see right away, and you can adjust all of those there. Fingerprints, these are pretty straightforward, except we have a fingerprint reader in the display on this phone. But to set these up, you can see I've already got two fingerprints set up, but to set one up, you just say add fingerprint, and it walks you through an easy tutorial on how to do this. And you just, on that in-display fingerprint reader, you just scan your finger until it's ready. You guys know how to do this. I don't think I need to finish that. And that's pretty much it for fingerprints. Now, the difference here is with the Galaxy S10e. The fingerprint reader is not in the display. It's actually over here in the power button. The whole process is exactly the same though. So you just put your thumb or your finger over it, and if you have a fingerprint reader set up, it actually unlocks. And to set those up, it's the exact same thing. Biometrics and security. Fingerprints, get in here, add a fingerprint, and instead of scanning the screen, you scan the bottom. Make sense, everyone? All right, so we'll jump back out of there, back to the S10 Plus. So once you've got all those things set up, you're kind of good to go. So I get to my lock screen, I double tap to wake. I can then put my finger on there. I could have it scan my face if I want to. So I can lift to wake, and we'll see if it scans my face, and it sure did, even behind the microphone. And then I swipe to unlock it. You get that? One of the cool things you may not know out of the box is, since the fingerprint reader is there, even when you're in this full dark screen, you don't have to wake it up in order to scan. You can actually tap once, and this is a default setting, and this fingerprint reader shows up there, and then you put your finger hopefully in the right spot, and then it unlocks. You can also kind of do it without tapping sometimes. You just, if you know where the spot is and just put your finger on there, it'll unlock. So just kind of a quicker tip to get right into your phone. It is there even if you can't see it. Makes sense? All right, let's talk about always on display for just a second. So always on display is this bit of information where you get notifications that show the time, the date, and your battery percentage. So you can really customize this. So we'll go ahead and unlock, go into settings, and then this is in lock screen. So if we go to lock screen, there's an entire section. Well, we should start here. Always on display, turn it on if you want to. From there though, there's a whole bunch of settings in here. You should kind of tweak them as you want. Tap to show means always on display is not always on. So you have to tap it once and then it'll light up with that information. I have it set to always on, but you could worry about battery issues with that, and I totally understand that. Or you could have always on display only show at scheduled times. Maybe you don't want it beaming always on display info while you're sleeping, for example. Decide what you want to do there. Screen orientation, I always want it in portrait. That's fine. Auto brightness, if you want it to auto brightness, depending on the lighting situation, always on display can do that as well. All right, so if we keep scrolling though, there's like a whole section here that's kind of always on display related, but they don't label it as that. But clock style, you can change the clock style for the always on display or the lock screen. And if you tap on that, it'll show you some examples and you can adjust it beyond that if you don't like that. Let's go ahead and cancel that. Roaming clock is, I believe, just a clock that shows you if you're in a different time zone. It'll show you that you're in a different time zone, if that makes sense. So local and home time zone, and wherever you are. Face widgets, we're going to skip that. Contact information, we'll skip that. Notifications though, this is kind of a big one. So if you dive into here, your notifications out of the box show up as a little bubble and you're always on display. Now you can change that style. If you want to see more information, you have a couple options for that. I talked about this in one of our cool S10e videos, but you can really customize the way your notifications show on that lock screen. And that's pretty much it, but you should figure out which one you like best. I actually like to see the notification, so I turn that on. And then app shortcuts in the bottom right corner, or bottom right and left corner of your lock screen. When you wake it up, you have two shortcuts. It's default out of the box, phone and camera. You can actually change those. So you can have those be any app you want. You don't have to have it be those, and you can actually change the style. If you don't want them always showing, you can change it to a button that you press in order to display both of those. So all good there. If you have that all set up, you should have your always on display all good. So I've got my information there. I double tap to wake, fingerprint reader down here, and that's pretty much it. So moving on to the next big section, which would be your camera. And this is kind of that last tip to get us out of the home screen. You should always know how to launch your camera the quickest way. And on the Galaxy S10, that happens to be with your power button. So you just double tap and that actually launches your camera. That's the quickest way. You can do that when you're in Chrome, in Instagram, in Facebook, any app you can do, or when the phone is sitting at an off state, you just double press and that launches your camera. And since we're in the camera, let's go ahead and talk about some camera stuff, right? So to get around the camera, you start off in photo mode, but there's all sorts of different modes. You can see down here, video, super slow-mo, live focus. You swipe left and right, and that'll get you between all of those. If you want to get through them faster, you can actually drag on that little bar down there that shows you which one you're in. So if you want to get all the way to hyperlapse and then all the way over to panorama, a quick swipe across those is the best way to do that. Now, photo mode, when you flip to photo mode, this is sort of your automatic out of the box mode, your default mode. Down here, you have these three little buttons, right? So the first one is just your standard wide angle. If you tap on this left one, that's your super wide angle. If you tap over here, this is your telephoto. So tapping between those is how you get to all of your different shot modes. Make sense? If you want to take those bokeh modes with the live focus blurring stuff in the background, that's actually called live focus. You can adjust the blur amount as you see fit here. There are some different modes in here also that really change the blur effect, and they're all pretty awful outside of the standard one and this one over here, which is called color point. And what color point does is it takes the focus on whatever's in front of you and uses the color of that, and then it kind of makes everything else gray in the background, or black and white and gray. It's actually really cool. You can take some cool shots with it, so you may want to play with it. But that is your bokeh mode. That's your portrait mode, if you will. There is a pro mode. I'm not going to walk through how to shoot in pro mode, but all of your settings for pro mode are right down here. You do have obviously video, and same thing here. You can flip between all of the different cameras in video as well. There's super slow-mo and slow motion and hyperlapse. You have all the modes you want in a phone, and that's really just how you get through them. The quickest is by sliding through here. Now up top, depending on what mode you're in, there are a whole bunch of settings, so you can change the resolution style. You can set time timers and use the flash and all that stuff, or we can just jump into settings. And in settings, there's a bunch of stuff to talk about here. I'll point out a few. Scene optimizer. If you have this turned on, when you have your camera up and ready, it actually tries to analyze the scene and to help take a better picture, maybe than what it currently shows or what pops up initially. It tries to optimize the scene for you to take better pictures. You decide if you want to use that or not. I would play with it, take some pictures with it off, some with it on, to see if you think it's actually improving. One thing it will do is bright night. It'll try to really, really greatly improve your dark situation photo. So you may want to play with it just for that. You can scan documents, and there's a starburst thing for lighting, things like that. Play with these, but the bright night one may be worth leaving that on for. But let's go back in here though. So motion photos are when you go to take a photo, it records a short little clip of what happens before each picture. It takes up a ton of space. I think they're kind of worthless, but you may find it fun. So feel free to turn that on. Video size, you may want to go in and adjust this out of the box to 4K if you want. And this phone will shoot all the way up to 60 frames per second at 4K. Up to you what you want to do there. Obviously, it takes up more space when you up the resolution, but 4K is a pretty nice resolution to shoot at. You can adjust the resolution of your front camera as well, all the way up to 4K. Up to you if you want to do that. Video stabilization, I would leave that on. It should just improve your videos overall as you're moving around in the real world. HDR, I would leave that on. Here's your grid lines. I'm a big fan of the 3x3 grid lines. Up to you. Those will show when you're in your viewfinder as you're taking photos. And quick launch, you definitely want to make sure that's on. That's that double tap on the power button. So that's pretty much it. If you go ahead and screw a bunch of stuff up in your camera, there is a reset settings button down here. So if you tweak everything and you're not liking what's going on, feel free to hit that button. It'll reset all of your camera settings back to default. That's it pretty much for the camera. Tap and shoot. And this phone is very, very fast. So we'll go ahead and exit out of there, and we'll actually go home, and we'll just talk a little bit about home screen. If that'll actually read my finger. We'll talk a little about home screen customization. So this phone, like any Android phone, you can customize the home screen, right? You can have pages of apps, and you have Bixby over here out of the box, and you have an app drawer down here. Let's just talk about some general ideas on how to customize it. First thing, swipe up, that gets you into your app drawer. And once you're in your app drawer, you can swipe horizontally, and that'll get you to different apps. The first thing I would do out of the box is in your app drawer, hit this button up here and go to sort and do alphabetical. And then every time you install an app, they are alphabetical. Otherwise, they will be installed and put at the end of this thing, and it's impossible to find things. I don't know why it's not alphabetized out of the box, but it is what it is. So turn that on. From there, in order to, well, let's go back to the home screen. So long pressing on the home screen gets you a bunch of options. This is how you change your wallpaper. This is how you choose a new theme. This is how you choose widgets you may want to install throughout your home screens. And then this is also some additional home screen settings. So while we're in here quickly, I'll just show you a couple of things I really like. Well, first, one is lock home screen layout. So if you get your phone set up just like you like and you don't want things to move around or be deleted or whatever, go ahead and turn that on. And then you can't move things around. You can't accidentally slide things around. Your kid can't grab some stuff and throw it in the trash and uninstall it. The other thing I would turn on is right here, quick open notification panel. So if I have that turned on, if I swipe down wherever, it brings down my notification panel. Rather than having to reach all the way up here to swipe that down, I can swipe from here. And if I swipe up anywhere, it still gets me into my app drawer. So definitely set that up. But we'll long press again. So out of the box, this is an AT&T model. So I've definitely got some apps that I don't really want on here that are set up on a home screen. I can swipe around here to adjust things, including deleting an entire page. So if you have a carrier model and you have this thing going on, just hit this trash button up here and it'll delete that entire page. Now it's not uninstalling those apps. They're still there in your app drawer. It's just getting rid of that page. If you need to add a new page, you can always hit the plus button over here, hit that trash there. You can change one to be your default home screen if you want by tapping on that home button, but I want it over here. So we'll go ahead and leave it over there. Bixby Home is a panel for Bixby where you swipe this way and it gets you into Bixby, which is Samsung's assistant that I don't tell very many people to use. But if you do find it useful, this is a quick panel that gets you into some stuff you can customize, like news for the day and the weather, and you can have it integrate with some of the apps, I believe, like Facebook and Instagram and things like that. It could be kind of a fun little look at your day. So I'll let you decide if you want to play with Bixby. If you're not a fan of Bixby, feel free to go into this preview mode and toggle it off. And now it's no longer there. Now you may have noticed I did a pinch move there. Instead of long pressing on your home screen, you can actually do a pinch move and that'll do the same thing. Everyone cool there. If you need to move things around, obviously you just long press on them and you can grab and drag and drop them wherever you want them to go. If you want to quickly uninstall an app, long press on it. Well, you can't uninstall that one. What about Chrome? Can't install that, uninstall that. Either these are all default applications. What about Google Pay? There we go. I can uninstall that or just remove it from my home screen, or I can go ahead and get into app information so I can uninstall or force stop it or see if it's using battery and notifications, that sort of thing. That's how you get into your app information pages. If I want to get rid of a whole folder, I just say remove from home. If I swipe in here, want to create a folder, I just press on an app, select items, and then I can just tap a bunch of stuff. And then when I'm ready to create a folder, I just now create a folder. And then I can name it and all of that stuff. And now I have a folder of apps that I created that quickly. And if I want that on my home screen, I just drag or long press and hit add to home. And then it puts it on my home screen. See how we do this? This is all pretty efficient stuff. One of the really cool things, though, is if you have a bunch of bloatware like I do with this AT&T stuff, let's say I want all of those gone. I'm never going to use those apps. Well, I long press on one, and I select items, then I select all these, and then I hit this disable button. And it says, cool, you want to disable a bunch of stuff? And I just go through one by one, disabling all of those apps. Now they're gone. They're not uninstalled fully, but they're disabled and won't be running in the background or doing that sort of stuff. Some nice little tricks there. So that's pretty much it for your home screen, just to get it set up and running. Now it's pretty minimal, and I've gotten rid of some bloatware and all of that stuff. I've sorted properly, and I'm kind of ready to go. And then from there, we'll go ahead and head into the notification panel. So notification panel, swipe once, swipe twice. Swipe once gets you here, swipe twice gets you here. And the biggest thing to remember here is the second swipe gets you into this area where you've got all of your quick settings for things like Bluetooth and auto rotate and your flashlight and airplane mode. But that single swipe down here gets you your 6 easiest to use shortcuts. Now, I mentioned this in a lot of videos, but swipe this down, tap this little thing here, and go into button order. And in button order, you long press and then drag things into the order you want. You should do this. And the first thing you should do is make sure you get those first 6 apps set up. So if you use flashlight a lot, put it in the first 6. Okay, the first 6 again are the ones that show up when you do this first swipe down. So those are probably the ones you're going to use the most. So make sure you get those first 6 set up. And again, that's just this button order, drag them however you want them in whatever order. And there's multiple pages of these. If there's some stuff you never want to use, just drag them up here and then they won't show up in this quick settings thing any longer. So swipe that up there too. Makes sense? And that's kind of it for up there. There is your settings icons. If you ever need to get into settings, it's always in this notification slide down. Got that. All right, so moving on from there, let's talk a little bit about Bixby. Now, I turned it off over here, and we'll actually pinch it. This is a different thing. Bixby Home is different from actual Bixby. So your phone comes with a Bixby button over here. If you tap that, out of the box, it should launch Bixby. And you can walk through and set up it to train your voice. So you can say, hi, Bixby, and then you can launch into things and have it tell you the weather or complete tasks and that sort of stuff. I like to use Google Assistant for that. So I'm not a Bixby professional, and I'm not going to be the best person to tell you how to get the most out of Bixby. I'm sorry, I'm a bad Samsung person. I'll let you decide if Bixby is something you want to use, but it could be useful, and they're trying to improve it, and they're on like the second or third major overhaul of it to try to figure out how it works, but that's how you get into it. What I'm going to tell you how to do is at least turn this to a double tap to press in order to open Bixby, because if you don't change it to a double tap, every time you accidentally bump that button, it is going to launch Bixby, and it's going to annoy the hell out of you. So I'm in Bixby now, and I tap this little menu, and I go into settings, and I go down here into Bixby key, and I go to Bixby key, and I tap this double press to open Bixby button. From there, you can do whatever you want, including the single press. If I change single press, I could have this actually open another app. So I could say, well, I want it to open Chrome. So every time I press the Bixby button now, it opens Chrome. And then to get back into Bixby, I just double tap and it goes into Bixby. So you can do whatever you want there, but I would say make that a double tap just so that it isn't constantly loading Bixby on you. And then also, if you just ever want to load Bixby and use its voice powers, you can always long press on that Bixby button, and you can see now it's reading me and listening to me as I do all of this. So we'll just tap home to get out of that. So that's Bixby. Again, I'm not going to show you how to use Bixby, but that is kind of the change I would make to the button, and then I'll let you decide how deep you want to get in there. I will show you how to use the new app switcher though. So in Samsung's new One UI and Android Pie, which this is running, you have a new app switcher layout. that looks like this. So rather than stacked cards, they're actually side by side and you swipe between them horizontally. So if I tap the little button down here, yours may actually be over here. I swapped my back and app switchers, which we'll talk more about in just a second. But if I pull this up, I can swipe apps up and that dismisses them if I no longer want them running. You can obviously tap on apps and that'll take you into one. You can tap on them. You can slide over here and I could go back into this section, or I can go back. You guys get it. So that's what that screen looks like. If you tap on icons up above here, it gets you some more information. Like this is actually how you get into split screen mode. So if you want to be in split screen mode, that's how you launch into that. If you don't want to be in split screen mode, let's say you want to do a pop-up, you can actually open apps within a pop-up, and that menu is also through there. So if you're missing what I'm doing there, there's an icon for each app up top. And if you tap on that, it gives you some features and some options. So that's what I'm doing there. One other thing I will point out is, like, let's say I'm in Chrome and I was in the camera also. Let me go ahead and launch the camera. So let's say I was in Chrome and I want to go back to the camera and I don't have my hand up here. On the home button, you can actually swipe to the right once and it'll launch into your most previous app. So see that? I'm just swiping the home button to the right. And if I swipe and hold, it actually then lets me scroll between all of the apps I have open, and then I could stop on, like, say, settings. So just a handy little shortcut there, but that is that's how your app switcher works. And then again, I can just swipe things away, or you can close all if you want. Down at the bottom here, these 4 apps, they should change throughout the day depending on what you're doing, but they are maybe most recently used ones or just app suggestions or something like that. So that's what you got going on down there. Next up, we have Samsung's Edge screen. So Samsung, for a number of years now, in the side of their screen has put in this little feature where you can swipe out from the side, and that'll get you into like shortcuts to apps you may want to use, tools, weather, sports scores, contacts that you may want to contact regularly. So in order to get into that, out of the box, you just swipe over from the side. Now, this is hard to pick up, but there is actually a little gray bar area right there that shows you where you need to swipe. So look for that bar and swipe on that. To customize this, you hit this little settings button down here, and this is where you get into, well, here's your people one in case you want to select contacts. There's some tasks that, like launching the camera, smart selecting things if you're really into taking screenshots and editing them. I mean, here's like some tools and some weather and some Samsung shortcuts and reminder lists, and there's all sorts of stuff. And I believe if you go up here, you can go to the Galaxy store and get more of these if you're not finding the ones you like. But anyways, this is Edge panels. Now, again, this is not something I use often. I actually usually turn it off. And if you're not a fan of it and you constantly are accidentally swiping it out, you turn it off by hitting that toggle right there. And now there's no more Edge panel. I'll let you decide if you want to use that, but that's what Edge screen is. It's been on Samsung phones for a long time now. All right, so now we're actually going to jump into settings and just start looking at a bunch of different settings you may want to think about tweaking. And first, we're going to start with sounds and vibration. So the big thing in here is, well, this is where you set your ringtone and notification sounds for sure. You can set up different vibration patterns as well. And this could be for when you have calls coming in, maybe something to stand out from just a notification vibration. But what I like to do is adjust vibration intensity. I mentioned this in my first 10 things video, but I always turn notifications down a little bit so that every email I get, my desk isn't vibrating the whole house. But incoming calls, I leave with vibration pretty strong just in case I want to make sure I don't miss those calls. And then touch interaction, as you're touching your phone, adjust how sensitive that thing is. I would toggle this on as well, which is use keys for media. So as I adjust the volume on this phone, you can see it's adjusting media. And if I have that turned off and I adjust the volume, it actually adjusts the ringtone. So I typically don't adjust my ringtone volume often, but I do when I'm watching video or media that I do regularly on phones like this. So if you have that switched, as you're watching media on your phone, it adjusts that. Now, if you want to then adjust your ringtone volume, you can actually just swipe down on this little pop-up menu and you've got ringtone and notification and system and big speed. So all of your volume controls are right there. So again, I'm adjusting that. I can swipe down on the little pop-up and that shows me all of that stuff. If we go into system sounds, these are a sound option for basically everything that makes a sound in your phone. go through this and see which ones you want off or on. But in advanced sound settings, there's some cool stuff like sound quality and effects. You can turn on Dolby Atmos if you want to. You can also adjust sound with an equalizer. You can custom set this, or you can go with something else that Samsung thinks you might prefer. Just some stuff to play in here. Dolby Atmos for gaming, you probably want to turn on for sure, really take advantage of those speakers in here. And then we'll back it out of there and actually go into the next set of settings, which is notifications. Now, there's not a lot to talk about in here, but this is where you'll find your do not disturb settings. So I'm a big fan of setting do not disturb schedules so that in the middle of the night, I don't get notifications, and I can only let specific calls come through, like those from friends and family, rather than some spam callers. That all happens in here. I'm not going to give you a step-by-step tutorial, but do not disturb. Go in here, set up a schedule, figure out which exceptions you want to allow, notifications to hide, that sort of thing. And then the other thing is in status bar right here, out of the box, because we share status bar up here with this hole punch cutout, Samsung only shows 3 notification icons at a time. If you want to see more than 3, this is the option to allow that. Also, if you want to see battery percentage at all times, this is where you toggle that on as well. So just go in here and tweak those things. Backing out of there, then we're actually going to go into display settings, which is right here. Now, there's actually a ton of stuff to talk about in here. Adaptive brightness, I would leave that on. It tries to learn your patterns in terms of adjusting brightness up and down. And so it's learning from you constantly. It's just a good thing to have on. A blue light filter, we should definitely turn this on, and you can set this up to come on as scheduled, and you can decide how strong you want it as well. A blue light filter tries to adjust eye strain at night. It gets rid of blue, so that blue filter, and turns to an amberish color, as you can see here. And again, helps ease eye strain. You can have it scheduled so it comes on at night and things like that. You don't have to toggle it manually. Night mode, so Samsung with One UI actually put out a full-on night mode. So if I turn that on, you can see it turns everything to black, including my notification panel, my settings, all of that stuff. And many of the Samsung apps turn to black. Now, this is another thing you can schedule. I personally like the light version during the day, and I like the dark version at night. So you can set up a schedule for that. Feel free to do that. Screen mode, there are 2 screen modes involved with Samsung phones. So natural out of the box gives a more natural look to colors, if you will. And if you go vivid, it actually gets a little wild. You can see how punchy those colors are if I toggle between these two. There's actually a pretty big shift. And then when you're in vivid, you can actually decide if you want it warmer or cooler. And then if you go into advanced settings, you can decide on some colors even further from there. Definitely tweak those into something you like. Screen resolution out of the box will probably be at full HD plus, which is 1080p. You have a quad HD phone if you have an S10 or an S10 Plus. The S10e is only 1080p, so you don't have this option. But here, if you want to get that full quad HD resolution, go ahead and apply that there. That's mostly it. We turned off screen edge earlier, edge screen. This is where you turn it back on if you decide someday you do want that back on. And then lastly, nav bar. I mentioned we talk about this. So navigation buttons, you can have them on out of the box, and out of the box they actually come this way with the back button on the right side, home button, and then your app switcher. I actually flip those because I'm an Android purist and I like the back button over here. You decide how you want. I'm not here to tell you which is better or not. If you don't like those and you want to live in the future, they're actual full screen gestures. So if I turn those on, Samsung now includes this gesture mode. So if I swipe up in the middle, and you've got little tabs down here to kind of remind you of what's what. So swiping up in the middle is how you get home. That's exactly how you get home. So swipe up there, gets you home. If you want to get into your app switcher, you swipe over here on, well, whichever side you have set up as your app switcher, and that gets you into your app switcher, and then I can go back home. If I'm in something, like let's say I read this article and want to go back a page, the back button is a swipe up over here, wherever you have your back button set up. So again, go into something, swipe over there, I go back into my app switcher, go back in here, and I can change whatever. So that's how the gestures work. They are not hard to use. You just decide if you want to tap on things or swipe on things. I like to tap on things, so I'm going to go ahead and stick there. All right, so backing out of display settings, the next thing under here is wallpapers and themes. This stuff's all pretty self-explanatory, but if you tap on that, it takes you into the Galaxy Themes store. Now, this is where you can find wallpapers. Samsung will make you pay for them. There are plenty of free wallpaper apps and websites all across this great world of ours. I don't know that I would go in here and buy a bunch of wallpapers, but you can if you want. However, there are themes and icon packs and always-on display replacements in here that you may want to take a look at. There used to be some really cool Pixel themes for those of us who wanted our Samsung phones to look more like Google's Pixel phones in their UI. What Samsung has done though now is really push all of the paid versions of things in here, where you used to be able to find free stuff really easily. That's changed a little bit. So hunt around and see if you can find that stuff. But there are full icon packs in here that'll change the look of most of your icons. And then always on display, if you don't like some of the stuff you're seeing and you're always on display out of the box, there's really some stuff you can kind of get a little wild with and you're always on display. So anyway, there is a shortcut to that right here. The first time you open it, it'll actually ask if you want to put a shortcut to wallpapers names on your home screen. Totally up to you if you want to do that. Now, lock screen and biometrics, we already did those, so I'm going to go ahead and skip right by that stuff. And accounts and backup, not a lot of stuff in here to care about, or Google settings. Advanced features, though, we were in here earlier, we're coming back. So this is where you can adjust more of that Bixby key stuff. This is where those motions and gestures are I mentioned for lift to wake, double tap to wake, but there's some other stuff in here to talk about. So Bixby routines actually kind of cool. This is one of those things about Bixby I do like. So Bixby routines are routines you can set up so that your phone will automatically do stuff depending on time of day, where you are, location, if it connects to your phone, that sort of thing. So they give you a bunch of examples, and these are things you may actually want to set up. So for example, if you set up a work one, it says, if I designate that when I get to work and your phone recognizes that location, then it turns my phone to vibration, turns Wi-Fi on, changes my lock screen shortcuts, that sort of thing, right? Which is kind of cool. You can have one that sets up to adjust a bunch of settings before you go to bed. And these all just kind of happen automatically. And there's a notification you can get at the bottom down here that will tell you when a routine has been running. But you can really customize some cool stuff, particularly the driving one might be nice. You can see their example here is turn Dolby Atmos on, make the screen rotate, read notifications aloud, change the lock screen shortcuts to Google Maps and Google Play Music, and unlock the phone. Kind of cool, right? I mean, these are some cool things. So I would say go ahead and set at least a couple of those up, maybe one for when you get home, when you get to work, and when you're in your car. And then if you want to get crazy, do the bedtime routine and stuff like that. Some other stuff in here. So smart capture. This is when you take a screenshot, you can have some extra tools. So to take a screenshot, here's a tip. Power and volume down at the same time takes a screenshot. And when you do that, if you have Smart Capture on, it gives you some tools down here at the bottom so you can continue scrolling and capturing a screenshot, draw on one, crop one, or share one quickly. That's what Smart Capture is. I'm a big fan of it, so I usually turn that on. I'm also a big fan of reduce animation. So if I hit home right now, you'll notice the screen kind of does that zoom out thing. Well, if I go back in and I turn that off and I hit home, you'll notice that zoom is gone. It just flips to home. So Samsung's really big on the animation things. I know Apple is. I know some other manufacturers are. So if you have that off again, see how it zooms? Well, if I turn that on and I go home, it just flips. So I don't like all those fancy animations, so I turn that off. Up to you. Just a little tip though. Game Launcher is kind of a cool little thing you may want to turn on if you're a big gamer on your phone. You turn on Game Launcher, it sets up an app that bundles all of your games together in one place. Rather than being spread throughout your app drawer, they are in a central location. So you can see I actually have Game Launcher over here, and this phone is empty, but if I had a whole bunch of apps that are games, it'll install them right there. So Game Launcher is just kind of one of those cool little features you may want to think about. Some of this other stuff I would run through and just look at if I were you, because some of these features are kind of handy, like Smart Alert. If you have that turned on, when you pick up your phone after not using it for a while, it'll vibrate if you have missed calls and some notifications. Kind of a cool thing. Palm swipe to capture. That is another way to take screenshots, and you just swipe your hand across it. And you can see I just took a screenshot of this. And those are most of the ones I like in there in terms of advanced features. The next thing to briefly look at then is digital well-being. So this is a Google initiative actually, where they're trying to show you how much you're using your phone and help you maybe unplug from it a little more often. I don't want to spend too much time here. I did this in our first 10 things video, but it's one of those things to look at to see what apps you're using the most, how long you're using them. You can set timers on them so you can cut off Instagram use after some point. And there's actually a wind down mode that turns everything into black, white, and gray to sort of give you that hint to maybe put down your phone a little bit. Anyway, digital well-being is one of those things that's new to Samsung phones. It used to be a Google exclusive thing. So give it a look. In device care, a lot of this stuff is kind of gimmicky, but look, if you go into storage, it'll offer you some options to clean up some of your storage. It could be old photos or old files that you don't need anymore, and you just hit clean now and it goes ahead and tries to wipe those. Memory. This is one of those things where if your phone's running a little sluggish, it'll look at a whole bunch of apps you may have running in the background. If you say clean now, it'll go ahead and kill those from running. might be worth a look. And then battery, there's actually a whole bunch of confusing stuff in here because there's too many settings. But if you go into battery, you can see what you're using and which apps are using your battery. And there's a whole usage section up here. But if you go into power mode, there's 4 different power modes, and each one lets you decide how much you're getting out of your phone. So there's a high performance mode with max screen brightness and resolution. It uses more battery. Out of the box, it'll come as this optimized mode, which is kind of a balance of performance and battery life, it says. Or you can start doing power saving stuff like restricting background data and turning off the always on display and limiting the CPU speed and adjusting brightness and dropping the screen resolution. So there's a whole bunch of stuff you can customize depending on what you're getting for battery life. There's also an adaptive power saving mode here, which tries to learn based on your usage patterns in order to save battery. So there's Samsung's own modes, and adaptive power saving, I believe, is a Google thing that came with Android Pie. I don't know how well these things will all work together, but they are there. You can also tap on the menu up here and go into settings, and you'll find even more options, like there's adaptive battery again. You can get notifications if apps are draining your battery. You can put unused apps to sleep. It'll auto disable some apps that haven't been used in a long time. There are so many settings in here, including one to turn on fast charging, which you should probably do for sure. So anyway, go ahead and tweak some of these things. In the end, I would probably go with some of the out of the box settings. And if you're having battery life problems, maybe decide on some of these. Adaptive battery may be something you want to explore as well, just to see if it'll kind of learn your patterns more and get better over time. Some reset options I wanted to show you really quickly in general management. These are kind of handy. So if you ever need to factory reset your phone, this is where you do it. However, I always like to point out the reset network settings. So if you're having issues with like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and maybe even your mobile data is having some problems, you can hit this, and instead of resetting your entire phone, it'll just reset all of those things: Wi-Fi, mobile data, Bluetooth. You can see that there. Just one of those things to do. And it's not something you have to do regularly. It's just one of those things you should think about doing if you're running into Wi-Fi problems, Bluetooth, or your mobile data is being a little fussy. And that's pretty much it. Oh, I guess the last thing I will mention then is this phone does have Google Assistant, and to launch Google Assistant, you just long press on home. I don't have a Google account on this, but you long press on home, and that actually launches into Google Assistant. So that's a lot of tips and tricks. I'm sorry this video was so long, but there's a lot to talk about with these phones. If you have comments, questions, let us know. Our Galaxy S10 reviews will be up shortly. We're Droid Life. Peace.